Wasted ability has a particular smell. It sounds like I was always good at, if I really tried, people used to say. I just never got the chance. These lines are not always lies, but after a certain age they begin to rot. A man can hide inside his early promise for years, using it as evidence that he is secretly above the life he is living. That is a miserable form of comfort. He does not have to face his current lack of results because the past keeps telling him he was chosen for more. The problem is that life does not pay a man for what he might have become. It pays him for what he repeatedly builds, sharpens, risks, finishes, and offers. Potential is a loan, not a crown. If it is not repaid through work, it turns into debt inside the soul. The dangerous thing about being naturally capable is that it can delay humiliation. A less gifted man meets the wall early. He discovers quickly that he must practice, ask questions, repeat the basics, accept correction, and survive embarrassment. A gifted man may avoid that wall for longer, and this delay can make him weak in a more hidden way. He gets used to succeeding without full effort, so when the level finally rises and ease disappears, he feels betrayed. The first real struggle feels like evidence that the path is wrong, rather than evidence that deeper training has begun. Instead of adapting, he may retreat into fantasy, criticism, cynicism, or another field where he can feel impressive again. This is how ability becomes a trap. It gives a man enough comfort to avoid the discipline that would have made him exceptional. Louis Terman's famous study should disturb anyone who thinks intelligence alone will save him. He tracked highly gifted children, expecting greatness to unfold as if the mind's raw horsepower were destiny. The results did not obey that fantasy. Many became respectable but ordinary. Some struggled badly. A few achieved distinction, but the story was far messier than the worshippers of natural brilliance would like. Even more brutal, two boys who were rejected by the study's standards, Luis Alvarez and William Shockley, later won Nobel Prizes. The lesson is not that intelligence is useless. That would be foolish. The lesson is colder. Ability opens a door, but it does not walk through it for you. A powerful mind without hunger, structure, courage, and sustained output can become merely a more complicated prison. Psychology calls this gap by many names, but a man does not need academic language to understand it. Some people are praised for traits they did not earn, and they begin protecting the image instead of building the skill. If being smart becomes your identity, mistakes feel like threats. If being talented becomes your identity, practice can feel insulting, because practice reveals imperfection. If being naturally gifted becomes your identity, effort feels like an admission that you are not as special as people said. That is why praise can make a man fragile when it is not attached to discipline. He learns to defend the label instead of improving the craft. He wants to look capable more than he wants to become capable. The result is a strange cowardice. A man avoids the very work that would prove his gift because he fears the work might also expose its limits. A serious man must stop asking whether he has talent and start asking whether his talent has been put under command. Raw ability is wild energy. It can impress people briefly, but it cannot be trusted until it has been trained. The writer with a natural ear still needs pages. The athlete with a strong body still needs repetition. The speaker with charm still needs precision. The businessman with ideas still needs execution. The intelligent man still needs judgment, patience, and the humility to master boring fundamentals. Talent gives you a sharper blade, but a blade left unused still rusts. Worse, a blade waved around without training can cut the man holding it. A gift without discipline often produces arrogance first, disappointment later, and resentment at the end. The world did not steal your greatness simply because it refused to reward your untrained potential. The saddest kind of failure is not the man who tried with everything and fell short. That man at least has honor in the evidence. He met the field. He paid the price. He learned what could and could not be done. The sadder figure is the man who protected his possibility so carefully that it never became real. He kept the dream alive by never testing it fully. He stayed vague enough to remain impressive in his own head. He refused the arena because the arena would have delivered a verdict. Many people do this quietly. They do not quit with a dramatic announcement. They simply keep postponing the full commitment, keep moving the start date, keep waiting for better conditions, keep calling themselves gifted while the years convert that gift into regret. A man should fear that ending more than failure. Failure can sharpen. Untested potential only haunts. Work is the fuel that makes ability dangerous, not frantic activity, not fake busyness, not long hours performed for sympathy. Real work is intelligent pressure applied repeatedly to the same target. It includes practice, feedback, correction, study, repetition, and the willingness to stay with a weakness until it stops humiliating you. Gifted man often hates this because it feels too ordinary for the size of his imagined future. He wants the result to appear in a way that matches the legend he has built inside himself. Real work does not care about legends. It cares about contact. How many hours with the instrument? How many sessions with the body? How many attempts in the market? How many drafts, calls, rounds, pages, conversations, offers, corrections? The gift becomes real only when it has a work history behind it. A man who wants to rescue his ability must begin with an audit, not a speech. Which gift has been neglected? Which field keeps calling you back? Which skill have you been romanticizing instead of training? Where have you been using intelligence to explain delay rather than remove it? Answer cleanly. Then give the gift a schedule. A gift without a schedule is still a fantasy. Give it protected hours, measurable output, hard feedback, and enough repetition to become visible in the world. Do not tell everyone at first. Attention can make the beginning feel complete before anything has been built. Let the work mature in silence. Let the first proof be private. Let the weak sessions count. Let the clumsy attempts teach. The man who finally places his ability under law begins recovering years that excuses tried to bury. Notice how easily you accept mediocrity in yourself while somehow expecting fulfillment anyway. You do the minimum, avoid the difficult, settle for good enough in nearly everything, and then feel puzzled that life seems flat and meaningless. You have been told these are separate issues, that your lack of effort and your lack of fulfillment are unrelated. They are the same issue. The emptiness you feel is the direct result of the excellence you are not pursuing, because a human being is built to reach for the fullest expression of himself, and refusing that reach produces exactly the hollow dissatisfaction you cannot explain. The ancient Greeks had a word that cuts straight to this, and it should change how you see your own life. Arete, they called it, meaning excellence, the full expression of a thing's essential nature. A knife's arete was cutting well, because that is what a knife is for. A horse's arete was running, the complete expression of what a horse was built to be. Everything had its arete, its highest function, the thing it was meant to do fully, and a man had his too. Though most men live their entire lives without ever learning the word or grasping the demand it places on them, understand what the Greeks believed a man's arete actually was. Not one narrow skill, but the becoming of the fullest version of what he could be. The complete expression of his particular nature and capacities. To pursue your arete was to strive relentlessly toward your own highest potential, to refuse to leave your gifts dormant, to become fully what you had it in you to become. This was not framed as self-improvement or ambition in the modern sense. It was understood as the fundamental purpose of a human life, the thing you were here to do, the standard against which a life was ultimately measured. Here is where it becomes uncomfortable, because the Greeks did not treat this as optional. Aristotle argued that a man who failed to pursue his arete was, in a specific and serious sense, incomplete as a human being. Not merely underachieving, incomplete, failing at the very thing that being human required, falling short not of some external goal, but of his own essential purpose. To waste your potential was, in this framework, a moral failure, a betrayal of your nature, a refusal to be fully human. The guilt you feel about coasting is not irrational. The Greeks would have told you it is precisely correct. Sit with the weight of that reframing. You have been treating the pursuit of your potential as a nice idea, something to get to eventually, a preference among preferences. The Greeks treated it as a duty, an obligation built into what you are, as binding as any moral law. Under this view, your daily choice to operate below your capacity is not a neutral lifestyle choice. It is a failing, a way of being less than human, a refusal of the one thing your existence actually demands of you. This is a heavier standard than the modern world will ever hold you to. And it is also a truer one. Consider why this ancient idea explains your modern emptiness so precisely. The hollowness you feel, the sense that something essential is missing despite having enough to survive, is the felt experience of a nature going unexpressed. You are a thing built to reach for excellence, and when you refuse that reach, you experience the refusal as meaninglessness, because you are violating your own purpose. No amount of comfort or entertainment fills the gap, because the gap is not a lack of pleasure. It is a lack of arete, the specific void left by a potential that is being wasted rather than expressed. Recognize that this cuts against everything the culture tells you about the good life. You are sold ease, comfort, the minimizing of effort, the life where you demand little of yourself and are rewarded anyway. The Greeks would have seen this as a recipe for a wasted existence, a betrayal of the very thing that makes life meaningful. Fulfillment, in their understanding, was not found in comfort, but in the strenuous pursuit of your highest capacities, in the effortful becoming of your fullest self. The modern promise of happiness through ease is, by this ancient measure, a direct path to the emptiness you already feel. Understand what pursuing your arete would actually give you, because it is the thing you have been searching for in all the wrong places. Meaning, the deep satisfaction that comes not from comfort, but from the full expression of your nature, from reaching toward your potential and refusing to leave your gifts unused. The man pursuing his arete feels the opposite of the hollow guilt that haunts the coaster, because he is doing what he was built to do, becoming what he was meant to become. This is where fulfillment has always lived, not in the easy life you were sold, but in the demanding pursuit of your own excellence. So take up the obligation the Greeks understood and the modern world has forgotten. You have a nature, a set of capacities, a fullest version of yourself that you were built to become, and the pursuit of that version is not optional decoration on your life. It is the purpose of it. Every day you spend operating below your capacity is a day you fail at the one thing being human genuinely requires, and the guilt you feel about it is not a flaw in your thinking but an accurate signal from your own nature, telling you that you are betraying what you could be.
A man thinks his unused ability is waiting for him somewhere, untouched, patient, loyal, preserved exactly as he left it. That belief is comforting, and comfort is often how decay enters without resistance. He tells himself he can return to the craft later, rebuild the body later, sharpen the mind later, finish the project later, speak the language later, restart the discipline later. Years pass while he keeps storing his better self in the future like property no one can steal. But the body does not store strength out of respect for intention. The mind does not preserve skill because the man once showed promise. A gift left unused does not sit in a locked room. It leaks, it weakens, it becomes harder to access. What once moved naturally begins feeling foreign. The frightening part is not that time passes. The frightening part is that time passes through you and takes pieces of capacity with it. A man who once had talent can become more trapped than a man who never believed he had any. The memory of being good at something becomes a sedative. He remembers the speed, the praise, the early ease, the way people noticed, the way the work came quickly before life became crowded. That memory allows him to feel close to the gift without actually feeding it. He can still speak about it as if it belongs to him, even while the evidence grows thinner. This is how the past becomes a fraud if it is not renewed by action. A former ability can turn into an identity costume. The man says, "I used to be good," and for a moment the sentence protects him from the harder truth. Today, the gift has not been trained, tested, stretched, or proven. Potential has a pulse only when it is being used. The quiet death of capacity rarely feels dramatic. A man does not wake up one morning and suddenly lose everything. The decline is more subtle. The sentence comes slower. The hands feel less certain. The breath runs out earlier. The discipline that once felt natural now requires negotiation. The skill that used to answer quickly now needs searching. At first, he blames stress, age, responsibilities, tiredness, timing, mood, or a temporary lack of focus. Some of that may be real, but none of it changes the law underneath. What is not used is not fully kept. The brain and body are efficient. They do not maintain pathways, strength, reflexes, language, timing, courage, or precision simply because a man likes the idea of having them. Life cuts funding from what receives no demand. That is not cruelty. That is biology with no sympathy for nostalgia. Neural pathways are like roads maintained by traffic. The more a pattern is used, the easier the signal travels. The less it is used, the more the road begins to disappear into the ground. This is why repetition is not just practice in the shallow sense. It is preservation. A musician who touches the instrument daily is not merely improving. He is keeping the path alive. A fighter drilling the same movement is not being boring. He is protecting speed from rust. A man who writes, sells, trains, studies, speaks, builds, or prays with consistency is telling the nervous system, keep this. It matters. Without that signal, the system starts trimming. The body has no interest in your fantasies. It responds to use. Whatever you want to remain strong must be visited, loaded, challenged, and made necessary again. Skill atrophy should terrify any man who keeps postponing his work, not because the numbers should make him panic, but because the principle is impossible to escape. Leave a professional ability untouched for years, and performance does not politely wait at the same level. It drops, the old confidence becomes unreliable because it remembers a version of the body and mind that no longer exists. This is why returning later often feels humiliating. The man expects to pick up where he left off, then reality hands him the bill for every unused year. He is slower than expected, less fluent, less brave, less sharp, less patient with the basics, because the ego still remembers being better. That gap between memory and current ability can break people if pride is running the room. A serious man accepts the bill quickly and starts paying. The lie of later is dangerous because it sounds calm. It does not feel like quitting. It feels like scheduling. A man tells himself he is being reasonable. The season is busy. The money is not right. The environment is not ideal. The mind needs space. The body needs time. He does not say he has abandoned the gift. He says he will return when life opens. But life often opens only for the person already moving. Time rarely arrives as a clean, empty field. It has to be taken, guarded, negotiated, carved from comfort, stolen from waste, protected from people who spend theirs cheaply. If a man waits for life to create perfect conditions before preserving what matters, he is not planning. He is surrendering slowly while keeping the language of control. A gift must be treated like a living thing under your command, not a trophy from your past. Living things require feeding. The feeding may be simple. 20 minutes of deliberate contact, one page, one drill, one sales attempt, one conversation in the language, one session under the bar, one sketch, one problem solved, 1 hour of deep practice with the phone out of reach. A man does not always need heroic volume to stop decay. He needs regular demand placed on the ability so the system receives the message that this part of him is still required. The tragedy begins when the gift receives no signal for months, then years, while the man keeps emotionally identifying with it. Identity without maintenance becomes delusion. If you claim something belongs to you, prove ownership through contact. There is a grief you carry that has no funeral, no name, no one to share it with. It surfaces in quiet moments, a heaviness you cannot trace to anything that happened, a sadness with no event behind it. You assume it is just your temperament or the general weight of being alive, but it has a source, and the source is specific. You are mourning someone. Not a person who died, but a person who could have existed, the version of you that developed the gift you have been ignoring. And you grieve him quietly every day, without ever knowing that is what the feeling is. Consider the thing you were clearly built for and have spent years avoiding. You know what it is. The pull you feel toward a particular kind of work, the ability that came more naturally to you than to others, the direction your nature keeps pointing even as you refuse to follow it. You have talked yourself out of it 100 ways, called it impractical, told yourself there was no time, buried it under a life that asks nothing of that gift. And still it sits there, undeveloped, and the ignoring of it costs you something you have never properly accounted for. Watch how the avoidance shows up in your body. Because this is not just a feeling in your head, the restlessness that will not settle, the fatigue that sleep does not fix, the vague physical unease that accompanies a life spent doing everything except the thing you were made to do. You have treated these as unrelated symptoms, medicated them with distraction and comfort, never suspecting they share a single root. Your body is registering the violation, responding to the daily refusal of your own nature with a low-grade distress that no amount of comfort can quiet, because the problem is not comfort, it is betrayal. Think about how the universe built you with a specific structure, specific capacities, a particular shape that fits certain kinds of work and not others. This was not random. You were assembled for something, given tendencies and gifts that point toward a purpose, the way a key is cut for a lock. To develop that gift is to fulfill the structure you were built with. To refuse it is to violate that structure. Not a moral law you could argue with, but something deeper and more mechanical. A structural law woven into what you physically are. And violating a structural law, unlike breaking a rule, produces consequences that do not care whether you agree with them. Understand that this violation produces measurable suffering, real and physiological, not metaphorical. The nervous system of a man living against his nature is a nervous system under chronic strain, registering the daily gap between what he is and what he was built to be as a persistent low-level distress. This is why wasted talent hurts even when no one else knows about it, even when you have hidden the gift so well that not a single person could name what you are failing to do. The suffering does not require an audience. Your body knows. Your nervous system keeps the account, and it charges you every single day, whether anyone witnesses the debt or not. Here is what the psychology confirms about unlived potential. Research into regret finds that the deepest and most lasting pain comes not from the things people did and got wrong, but from the selves they failed to become, the potential they sensed and never pursued. This regret has a name in the studies, the pain of the ideal self left unrealized, and it outlasts and outweighs nearly every other kind of suffering.